Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you a little trick that I used to create some dreamy ambient vocal chops from my new song called When I See You. So we're going to hear a little bit of a sneak peek of this track. It's not out yet, but it should be out within the next 2 weeks, so you can look forward to that. Just got to create the album artwork and finish off the mix a little bit, but I've got the vocal chops done, so I'll show you how they sound at the moment. In context of the track, they sound like this. By themselves, they sound like this. Now, when it comes to vocal chops, sometimes in EDM, artists will use a sample pack of just like a random vocal recording from a singer. But because this was a part of a track with vocals that I had recorded myself, I decided to just choose a few parts from the vocal that sounded like they had a good sustained note to them, some kind of interesting like movement to them, a nice vowel. And I chopped them all together and put them into this channel here. So I got all of my little clips that I wanted to use, and then one by one I dragged them into different channels in this drum rack here. And you'll see as the samples are loaded into this simpler instrument here, it crops out the section that the clip was using, so you don't need to set these start and end points unless you want to alter it a little bit. And you also still have access to all the other parts of the file, which is nice. So now that it's in a drum rack, we can play each of these individually. We can choose how long we want them to play for, we can set fades if we want, and we can also apply unique processing to each of these within the drum rack. So once I'd put those in there, I pulled up a MIDI clip and started experimenting with the rhythm and the flow of the arrangement of these vocal chops. So you'll notice if I overlap them here, they'll both be playing and they play until the end of their clip length. But if you want to avoid that so that there's only one playing at any given time, you can just open up the chain selector here, click I/O, highlight everything and click on choke and choose one of the numbers. And this basically makes it so that the entire drum rack only plays one sample at a time. So now when they overlap, this one will be cut off short. For me, that was the kind of sound that I was going for. I didn't want something too messy. In this clip here, if I turn off all of the post-processing, you'll hear that each of the clips gets cut off right as the next one plays. Now, something else you might notice is that each of the chops has a different space in the stereo field. You can change the panning of a sample within Simpler by clicking on the Controls tab here and just changing the pan value. So I went through each of these and just gave it a slightly different spot. I wasn't being too strategic about it. You can see it's just a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to make it feel like they were coming from a wider range of spaces and separate them out a little bit better. This also worked out particularly well because I have other instruments that are sitting in the same spot, and the vocal chops weren't really designed to be the primary lead instrument at that moment. We've got a guitar that's playing a little bit of a simple solo here. And then eventually this piano comes in. So my point is I could kind of afford to have the vocal chops all over the stereo field without losing the drive and the momentum, like it's still got that solid base of instrumentation. So moving on, if we look at each of these samples, I've also pitched some of them. So this one here, for instance, originally it sounded like this, but then I wanted to transpose it up 5 semitones. It was already in key, obviously, because it's a melody from the same song, but just has like a different kind of quality to it. Makes it a little bit more robotic and computerized. There are other sounds where I put a little altar boy on it so that we could change the formant of the sound. This one here, you can see I've shifted down 4 semitones. So yeah, it's fun to just go through and play with each of the individual samples and see how you can make them feel different. Then I EQ'd everything together just to get rid of a lot of those S's. This is more of like a de-esser. I didn't want anything standing out too much just because it was a background sound effect. It's not meant to be pronouncing any words, so getting rid of the S's and T's worked out for this. Next up, I EQ'd it all so that it had a lot less body to it and pushed it back further into the mix a little bit with this low pass. I just chucked on this glue compressor to level out a lot of the dynamic variation between the samples. Particularly that R, that was a lot louder than the others. I put on an 1/8 note delay with Echo Boy on telephone mode. Very subtle mix in, you can hear what that sounds like. Helps space it out a bit more. I chucked on a satin next to add some tape saturation just to feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy. It just kind of helps glue everything together a little bit more as well. Like especially putting the Echo Boy before the satin, it means each of the echoes is going to be saturated and compressed into the sounds. And I did a little bit more EQing and some dynamic EQing to try and tame the intrusive frequencies. That also helps glue everything together because a lot of the samples had different characteristics and just the way that I was performing them at the time. And then finally, I put on this Duck plugin. This is basically like a sidechain compressor type thing. You'll really hear the difference with and without it. And since we've got this 4 on the floor kick here, it really helps it sink into the mix. The only other notable thing I put on this was an auto filter, the low pass just slowly sweeping down over the course of the phrase just to help it fade out a little bit as the piano comes in. They kind of switch spots for the listener's attention. It's how I made my vocal chops for this song, When I See You. As mentioned before, this song should be coming out in the next 2 weeks. I'm really keen for you all to hear it. I love how the vibe of it came out. It was inspired by the likes of Lord, Jacob Collier, even some of the parts were inspired by the Flaming Lips and their background vocal styles. And I ultimately just had a lot of fun with it. I'll play through this entire section just to play us out. But before I do, I wanted to mention that I haven't really been in the best place personally for a little while now. And I embarked on this whole YouTube channel project to kind of give myself something to work towards. And I know that I have a lot to share with my music production and my music journey. And I'm still going to be posting here. But I think I'm going to take away my every Friday commitment just for now until I can kind of get to a better place. Ultimately, this move is just to make sure that the videos that I put out are the best quality possible. I think quality is more important than quantity. I might not be posting next Friday necessarily, but I will be posting soon. Anyway, with that, let's play out and hear the rest of the tune.